Cyber Innovations in the Private Sector highlights case studies and the latest industry trends from private vendors. Explore innovative solutions, success stories, and exclusive insights from industry leaders. Stay ahead with the cutting-edge developments driving the industry forward.
Today on CyberSecTV, we speak with Darragh Kelly, Product Marketing and Go-to-Market Leader, about turning cybersecurity technology into market success.
My name is Darragh Kelly. I'm a go-to-market leader in cybersecurity. Over 25 years experience working with European cybersecurity companies, always focused on product and positioning and go-to-market strategies.
We need to be very clear on the difference between technology and product, because very often we think they are the same thing. And technology is very much an inside-out scenario. It is a series of technological capabilities that we have developed inside our company. It's all about the what's and the how's. This is what we do, this is how we do it. And historically, Europe has been very good at technology, right? We have great talent, strong engineering cultures, and grant programs that have helped create amazing tech. However, product is outside in. Product is how value is created and delivered in the market and not just built. And value only exists if you are solving real problems outside in the market. So first, we start in the market, we identify real problems, then we develop the product to solve them. And they can't be any types of problems, okay? They need to be problems that are urgent, pervasive, that's affecting a growing group of customers or companies. And that growing group needs to be willing to pay for those problems to be resolved. So we identify, we solve problems, and that is the base of creating value. And once we've created the value, we must deliver that value to the market. And this is your go-to market. And I think this is where many companies struggle in our sector, because go-to-market is often seen as something you do once the technology is built, right? But for me, go-to-market has to be an intrinsic part of the product itself. So everything from your channel, your onboarding, your licensing, your provisioning, all of that has to be taken into consideration at the design of the product, right? So technology is not product. Technology is focused internally, what we do, how we do it, and product is focused externally. How do we create value resolving real problems, and how do we deliver that value to the market, contemplating our go-to-market at a design level? So how do we bridge the gap between product and technology? We obsess about creating value, about solving real problems, and we obsess about delivering that value, and all of that contemplated at a product design level. I think we can all agree that we live in a very noisy industry, okay? Buyers are drowning in information. There are too many technologies, too many categories, there's too much complexity. And what we often do as an industry, we bombard our customers with the technology, okay? We obsess about what we do and how we do it. And what is even worse is that many companies are actually proud of this complexity, right? They feel it makes them look more advanced, it makes them look more relevant. And therefore we need to simplify. And for me, there are two main points. First, focus on the problems, not on the technology. The clearer you can articulate the problem and how you resolve it, the faster you can cut through the noise. And second, focus on simplifying the customer's next step in their cyber journey. Don't try to explain 5 or 6 steps down the line that the customer will not be able to understand because they don't have the maturity. Articulate clearly where they are today and show them how to take the next step with you. Therefore, focus on the problem and simplify the customer's next step. For me, it starts with being obsessed with real problems. That is how you cut through the noise. And then once you are clear on the problems you solve, you need to be coherent and consistent in how you communicate over time. Okay, and that's what builds trust. But consistency in messaging is difficult, right? Because in our industry, every week there is a new buzzword, there's a new trend, right? There's a new competitor's message, and AI is doing something completely new from week to week. And companies are constantly tempted to change their messaging, right? To adapt, to pivot, right? But trust is built through that consistency. And you need to be consistent across every customer touch point, right? So your website, your sales meetings, your demos, your onboarding, the product experience itself, they all need to tell the same story, because incoherence creates distrust. And the reality is that customers often won't even know why something feels wrong. They won't say, we reject this because the narrative is inconsistent. Instead, they will say, listen, we don't have budget, or we're going in another direction. But many times what is really happening is that something didn't feel coherent. And Gartner has shown that incoherence in the buying journey has a measurable impact on lost opportunities. And I think the data point is maybe 35% of opportunities are lost to that incoherence. So therefore, focus on the problem and be coherent and consistent in every action or interaction with your customers and potential customers. At the end of the day, everybody wants to be recognized as something in the market, but positioning, it takes this consistency over time. And there are two major mistakes I see repeatedly. First is that companies are not clearly defining how they actually want to be positioned or recognized. Okay? If you are not clear on how you want to be positioned or how you want to be recognized, it's impossible to achieve it. Now that sounds obvious, but how many companies truly have a clear positioning statement articulated, right? A document, and it's shared in the organization internally. And second, a big problem is lack of focus. Companies try to position themselves too broadly. And I know this might sound obvious, but you cannot be all things to all people. And if you market to everyone, your message is for no one. And I always love the PayPal example here. They didn't initially try to position themselves as the number one digital payment option globally. So what did they do? They focused, they positioned specifically in a tiny niche of eBay users, which were the power sellers on eBay. And they became number one in a very focused first segment, and then they expanded into adjacent markets. But today, how often do we see companies presenting these massive TAMs, these target addressable markets, or these service addressable markets, and our service objective markets, that cover the whole world? So therefore, first clearly articulate your positioning statement and share this internally, and then focus on a market segment you can dominate quickly. Go-to-market is not something you do once the technology is built. It is not a case of, here's the technology, now reverse engineer a go-to-market strategy to get traction in the marketplace. Your product needs to design your go-to-market strategy, or it needs to contemplate your go-to-market strategy at design level. It can't be separate to your product. So, just for an example, okay, so let's imagine an OEM scenario, okay? Imagine we have developed an amazing malware detection engine. And let's say a firewall company wants to integrate this malware detection engine into their product. Now, our job is not just to have a great malware detection engine. Our job is to make sure that it creates value within the firewall product as quickly as possible. And I remember working with Bitdefender, the OEM team. Bitdefender, a great European cybersecurity firm, over a decade ago. And they did an amazing job at this, the OEM team. And this was before everything was, AI driven. And they simplified the integration process essentially into copy pasting a few lines of code. And then they made the API calls super simple. And that was brilliant product thinking, because in an OEM go-to-market model, integration is part of the product itself. So therefore, product needs to contemplate your go-to-market strategy at design. For me, the biggest mistake is trying to scale before we've even achieved a working model. So we haven't achieved product market fit. And I would even go further and say that we haven't achieved a clear go-to-market product fit, okay? So conceptually, we need to scale. That's something that is working. But if not, all you're going to do is scale your problems, okay? And I always use the example of a sales funnel, okay? So if we imagine a sales funnel, and if we put water into the top, and if this funnel has holes in it, the water is going to fall out. Okay, so you don't want to put more water into something that is losing, the funnel that is losing water. Okay, so first we need to fix the holes. So companies need to ask themselves, are we happy with our operations? Are we growing in a way that is sustainable? And not just at a sales level, at other operational levels within the company, at a QA level, etc. So is it industrialized, and basically is the funnel holding that water? So that will give you the proper indications to invest more and grow. There's no magic formula here, okay? Especially once we start dealing with the complexities of international markets. There's so much outside of our control, and we've got geopolitical situations that are crazy, okay? And again, I'll sort of put a disclaimer here that my background is in product and my background is in software. Okay, just a bit of a disclaimer. But for me, there are 2 points that personally I found very instructive in my career. And first, you need to have a country model that is already working. Okay, so that is what you want to export. Okay, you want to export something that is already working. You want to have a clear product market fit. You want to be growing in a way that is acceptable. You want to have healthy conversion rates, a repeatable sales process, and manageable churn. Okay, so global scaling starts with a repeatable model. So you have to have that, locked down. And second, I've always believed doing things in twos, or at least in twos, because when you launch in multiple markets, if you do it in twos, you can start to distinguish between what is genuinely local versus what is actually a common pattern across multiple markets. And if you only do things in one, you will have local country teams trying to convince you that their market is completely unique. It is something you do not understand, and it is completely different to your original country model, right? And anybody that has worked in internationalization will know this very clearly. So if you do not have multiple countries to run these comparisons, you become very tunnel visioned. So therefore, have a country model that you can export that is working, and do things at least in twos. It's definitely a fragmented market, right? It's, different countries, different languages, cultural, different procurement models. So from a go-to-market perspective, it is naturally more complex than operating in a single large domestic market, such as the US. However, at the same time, we're also seeing increasing alignment, I would say, through regulation. Okay, so like you have the NIS2, you've CRA, sector-specific requirements such as DORA, and these are creating common cybersecurity pressures across Europe. And I think this is important because security and compliance are becoming sort of more interconnected. So organizations are no longer only asking, will this product investment help me defend against these threats? Okay. They're also asking, how will this product investment help me comply and respond to regulatory pressure today and moving forward? And I think that creates a significant opportunity for companies that can clearly connect cybersecurity value with compliance outcomes. I think there's a very clear shift happening in Europe. Organizations and institutions are becoming increasingly aware of the structural dependency we have on large US and Israeli cybersecurity firms and vendors, right? And many now are starting to look for European alternatives. For years there was a saying, no one ever got fired for buying Palo Alto or buying Checkpoint, right? That was the phrase. But the mentality is changing, and I think that creates a structural opportunity for European firms, especially, the companies that have genuinely believed in European cybersecurity for many years. Companies like Clavister in Sweden. In France, you've got Storm Shield and Sequoia, a great firm. And at a Spanish level where I am, you've got Teldat and also Cypherbit, Grupo Cia, where I am presently. And these are companies that have maintained a very coherent European first vision for years. And I think now they're beginning to benefit from these consistencies. Because sovereignty is not just a tagline, it needs to be reflected in the product, in the strategy, and in the long-term vision, I would say. And another point, I think EU companies need to become much better at communicating their success to the market. I think there is this saying, nothing succeeds like success, right? But in Europe, marketing is often seen as something like a necessary evil. Okay, companies almost feel proud of the fact that they don't do marketing well. They feel proud of it. It's like, no, we do technology well, and the US does marketing well. And, we just need to understand that trust in the market is built through visibility, consistency, and proof over time. And that's what marketing achieves. So therefore, opportunities for EU firms are, be European by design and market your success and create that trust.